So we would like to start. So good afternoon, everybody. I'm actually excited about both of this afternoon's sessions. I think those of us who were here yesterday or who participated in this morning's tour or joined us today and decided to come to today's session realize and acknowledge the cultural complexity in Israel and in the region, and in particular the centrality of the Arab-Muslim culture in Israel and in the region in general. So I'm very, very pleased that this session, this afternoon session, and the one that will follow it will be totally devoted to very important projects that are done currently in the Arab world, in Israel, and not only in Israel. So I'm very pleased to introduce our first speaker, Professor David Dickinson, whose lecture is entitled Insights from 3 Years Working with Preschool in Abu Dhabi. Professor Dickinson studies and is involved. Okay?
Keep going. I just want to get the screen up
Okay,
here.
yeah, you know what I'm saying, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so Professor Dickinson studies and is involved in language and literacy learning and development, and additionally is in professional development of teachers. In Abu Dhabi, he is currently directing the school-based efforts of Vanderbilt University to create and study a model kindergarten and primary grade school by collaborating with the government, school leaders, and instructional coaches. He's co-author of 3 volumes of the Handbook of Early Literacy Research and has authored and co-authored many articles published in peer-reviewed journals. I'm very pleased to welcome you and looking forward to hearing your talk.
Co-authored the Handbook of Early Literacy Research with Susan Newman, it should be noted. The co-author is right in our midst. I just want to make sure I've got the brightness up here. All right, well, it's a great pleasure to be here, to be speaking in such an energetic, interesting meeting with colleagues, many I've known for a long time and some I'm just getting to know. I was thinking yesterday, the last time I was in Israel was for Israeli literacy conference that I was invited to by I'm sure Ofra or Dorit, I'm not sure which. Both of you had something to do with my being there. That's right. And while I was here, I got to know Iris Levine, and I have fond memories of a dinner that we had eating when I first arrived. And at that point, of course, Dorit and Ofra were devoted followers of hers, and I feel like her work is being carried on now as I see the wonderful students who are following and presented here yesterday, that her spirit lives and is alive and well. And so it's wonderful to see the vibrancy of the research that's being done in this country around early literacy issues. So I will go fairly quickly here. 3 years is a lot to condense in one talk. But as I was thinking about trying to do this, I just couldn't help but think the extent to which considerations about how you go about establishing effective schooling just has to take into account the cultural and institutional context, which of course in Israel is incredibly complex. As we were reading this morning, we were walking through the layers of complexity. In Abu Dhabi, of course, it's a Muslim culture, but it's also a very complex institutional context, with the education ministry there, ADEC, trying to move the country in radically new directions, and it's a complex process. Within the schools and within the people who are working with us, there's considerable challenges around personnel. The local Emiratis are frequently wonderful, but may not have experience of the sort of professional expectations that go with schools, not accustomed to evaluations of the kind that we're used to. The teachers who work as the English sources, the English medium teachers come from all around the world, and they have to learn to work with each other. So there's real challenges with people working with each other, which it plays out in terms of setting norms and expectations, how you work together in a school community. And then layered in the middle of all of that, are arriving on instructional methods and routines, ways of supporting the teachers that are able to bring about effective instruction. I'm going to mostly focus on this final circle here, but it's set within these other layers that are very important for contextualizing what we're doing. To just go back to the big picture, what's going on in Abu Dhabi came from a long-term vision statement that the country put out. They want to move from being a resource-based economy to a knowledge-based one, shifting from such a heavy dependence on oil to more of a technological society, and they know that for that they must have an educated workforce, and they recognize that the preparation for their running their own businesses is sadly lacking in the schools. And so they are trying to move toward improving that. And as part of that, there's something called the New School Model, which was implemented initially in 2005. And core pillars of that are they want to have biliterate and bilingual competence in Arabic and English. Children are starting in bilingual schooling from age 4, and the goal is to have it go through grade 12. They are now up to grade 5. In the 2 schools I'm working with, we have the bilingual education going up that high. Of course, they want to have mathematical and scientific knowledge that's required for the 21st century. And they have very Western-sounding standards in terms of the students and the outcomes that they're looking for. Creative, inquiring problem solvers, and they're very clear about the importance of connecting to them and maintaining the Islamic culture and beliefs. So they're very aware of trying to walk this balance. And I didn't put on here, which is central, mixed gender education. They now, in this preschool, is mixed gender, and in the primary grade that I work with, we have mixed gender up through 4th grade. That's as high as they go in the country in terms of mixing genders in the schools. The goal is to go all the way up. Since the Arab Spring, things have gotten a little more difficult. They've had to pull back in some of their initiatives that threatens to run into problems with the more conservative elements. Critical to the success of what we're doing is that the Vanderbilt had the ability to hire a principal. She's a Canadian with special education background, Deb Chenier. Absolutely spectacular vice principal who's Emirati. Well, she's married to an Emirati. She's actually Egyptian, Amna. We have 3 English-speaking coaches who are from U.S. background, and 2 Emiratis who we've brought on board over the last couple of years. And we have a special education coach. There are 12 classrooms. The way they refer to them is KG 1 and 2. KG 1 is basically in the U.S. system preschool, 4-year-olds. KG 2 is what would be kindergarten for us. Theoretically, there's 1 AMT and 1 EMT in each classroom. I say theoretically because staffing is a problem. Right now, we opened the school with 12 classrooms, and 1/4 of the EMTs are missing, and 1 of the AMTs, and another one is out on pregnancy leave. Yes.
What is AMT?
I'm sorry. Arabic medium teacher, AMT, EMT, English medium teacher. So there's 2 teachers, 1 Arabic and 1 English in the classroom at all times. So starting from the beginning, one of the big challenges in this school, and this school is just one of all in the country where we've been, I think, more successful than most, establishing trust and respect. You have 2 teachers in the same classroom. From totally different backgrounds, pedagogically, religious, personal, everything that you can imagine, and they need to share power, space, and pedagogical methods. And working with that, we need to have, a relationship among the leadership, the principal, and the vice principal. Fortunately, they are absolutely very, very tight and good friends at this point. So there's all these different relationships that have to be built up, and I already mentioned these other issues of professionalism. It's one of the challenges been, there's a requirement, and it's important to a good school, is that teachers are observed and evaluated. Well, many of the Arab teachers have never been evaluated in a way that's objective, and so there's lots of tears and great distress when they're told they're not perfect. And so that's been a tough message that's had to been delivered on multiple occasions. We have Arabic teachers who've left. They come to the school and they have to work too hard. and they're not accustomed to being pushed in the ways that they're pushed. So this is an unusual school, and we have now selected staff who have self-selected themselves to stay here. And I mentioned the teacher turnover. The teacher turnover is built into the way the English instruction is provided because the English teachers sign up for 2 years, and they may stay on or they may not. So you have the kind of churning. I've touched on some of these. I'm going to skip over this. One of the things you have to develop a shared understanding of child development. I mean, how do you think of what is development? How do you instruct children? So where do we start? Some of the starting basic points. Fortunately, Vanderbilt, through this contract with Abu Dhabi, has had very considerable resources. So we've been able to, the school is already reasonably well provisioned. Although when we moved in, the previous occupants, this tells you a little of the way the school culture is. The previous occupants took everything in the building when they moved to another school. So we arrived the first week, they had rugs, furniture, children, teachers, and nothing else. They'd stripped the building. So it took a while to get books and paper and everything else. So they started the building with not much. And we have to get routines in place, of course. That was the early thing, and then setting up classroom environments. Okay, I'm aware of time here. I'm going to move rather quickly. So the first place we started was getting, I say we very generously. I've never been a preschool teacher. This is the closest I've ever been to the real preschool in action, so it's been a kind of an interesting experience for me. I'm up to my eyeballs in really the practical stuff. This is not research. This is making something work and learning from that effort. So the we is the principal and the teachers, and I've got a pretty good eye. I've actually made quite a few suggestions that have been quite important in the guiding it, but they do it. So you see the beautiful classrooms that have come to being. One of the strategies that we use for getting classrooms in shape and maintaining a high quality environment is we constructed a tool. I started with a vision that's like a tool that I've previously created or helped create in the United States called the ELCO, and you'll see bits of it. I worked with the coaches to create a new tool that is tailored specifically to the environment, and that has provided an objective description of what the classroom should look like. It's used by observation by the teachers and the coaches, and it's the way that the principal says, this is what your classroom should look like, this is what the routine should look like, and you're going to get evaluated on it. I'll show you some of that. So what this does, this tool communicates a shared vision through an objective means. It's not, I don't like you. It's like, here, this tool says you should be doing this, and so you're not doing it. So if we can't see it, it's not happening. It depersonalizes the evaluation. And then there's discussions about the instructional quality that can be based around whether you're achieving the things that are listed on the tool. So just to give you a feel for this, it's a little hard to see. These are some of so there's classroom layout. So you're supposed to have a space for group and clear discrete areas for different activities. One of the things I learned very early on was it seemed that the Arab teachers have a different aesthetic, which I've seen as I get a better understanding about how space is used. They want everything around the outside of the wall. They didn't want to bake up the space with bookshelves and things. So we had to arrive at an understanding about how we were going to use the space in the classroom. Sand and water table, construction area, all the sort of basic kinds of things. Outdoor learning area that's used when it's not too hot. When I got there, it took the first 2 years before anybody, they're on one floor. All you got to do is open the door and you're outside, but nobody was using the outside. Here's routines, expected kinds of routines, how long you're in group time, the fact that group times have to change, that a daily schedule is posted, all of these sort of basic expectations. So here's some things. Book area, you have to have a certain number of books. You have to have places for books around the room. You have to have writing. Should be print around the room. You'll notice everything's in Arabic and English. These get translated and get used by the Arabic teacher as well as by the English teacher, and you'll see later on we have scores for both. One of the things that I kept having to work with, I noticed early on that there wasn't much Arabic on display in the classrooms, and so we had to ratchet up the amount of Arabic that was getting used and displayed throughout the day because it was not as familiar for the Arabic teachers to do that. Role play, something that we put a fair amount of time into. I'm not going to have time to show you. I had a little trouble with my internet connection, maybe tomorrow. We've got the Arabic teachers now engaging the children in role play in the classrooms. So this just gives you a little sense of the development. On the left is what things looked like when I was first over there taking pictures, and on the right, just kind of stuff scattered around and not much of it, disorganized, and no particular focus to it. That's October of 2011. By February, we had, for one thing, bought a bunch of books, but they also had gone through this process of having this focus on what the environment should look like. We had the tool available. That of course didn't do it by itself. We had coaches, we had professional development, and they were starting to use things. You saw the Arabic displays were starting to be put up. Those displays were what was kind of more common early. The rather common sort of cookie cutter type things. They're Arabic displays. They're done by children. They have children's writing, but everything is kind of the same. Here you see what the data look like. This is the KG1 classroom in January and May of 2013, just so you can see. We've got all these different areas here, book area, classroom, math, and so forth. It's laid out by classrooms. We have the means here, the black lines, basically around 80%, and then by the spring sometimes if you do this kind of data, they drop off in the spring. We manage to maintain the quality. So we have things approaching in the 90th percentile in terms of meeting our criteria. You've got the certain classrooms, and we know who those teachers were. There are weak teachers everywhere. We had the same thing for, this is the Arabic here, I'll just show you. We collected these data for Arabic, and you see by the most recent data collection, the average scores are up around 90 percentile. KG2, basically the same picture. By the end of the year, we had the average scores were like 90% sort of success with all of these different criteria. Actually, there's so high a success rate that the coaches now have asked for us to put more items and make it more challenging. I'm going to skip over that. Okay, so we got the environments in place. The next critical, or in parallel, really critical, was getting instructional routines in place that could provide some focus for what we're doing. And here you see two of the coaches having a meeting with the teachers. We have regular coaching sessions. One of the things that the meetings were as important to do, really it took us a year to get to the point where there was what I would call a conceptually guided instruction. We started with pretty trivial kinds of things that happen in preschools around the world. A few little ideas for 1 month or a few weeks, and a few for another week. But there wasn't any sort of conceptual depth to it. So they went through a process of laying out the topics that they were going to do. They came up with this all together. And you'll notice that they got to the point they're taking notes in both Arabic and English. And so they generate the conceptual core of what they're going to talk about and deal with for a month based around core books. So they have to agree on the shared books, and then for each book they come up with vocabulary that they're going to teach and core ideas. So it's a conceptually engaged and sustained work. All the centers have to connect with that, but not slavishly, but there are different centers that need to connect with it. The language and literacy instruction, you see one of our wonderful coaches here. We do repeated readings of books in 2 different languages, and starting with the Arabic. So in order to do that, we have to choose books. As I mentioned yesterday, there was some challenges around coming to an agreement on what good books are. I haven't heard that much since the first year. So the same book is read multiple times, and the goal is to take the children into increasingly deeper conversations about it. I'll just give you a tiny flavor here. They were doing a unit called Under the Sea, and for that unit, they were reading a book called Swimming, which is about a little fish here. I'm just going to try to jump forward to.
A little fish swimming.
All right. So Swimmy is a little fish who almost gets gobbled up by a tuna fish, and then bands together with other fish
Do you remember this story?
to be safe from the tuna that is
Some of you remember.
threatening them.
The story is of a little darting through the wires fast. In one gulp, he swallowed all of the
So they
little
will have heard this in
fish.
Arabic. This is the first English reading, and we give a lot of information when the first reading.
Swimming got away. He escaped. He didn't get eaten. He swam away in the deep, wet world. He was scared. He was lonely and very sad. All the red fish were.
What's her name?
This is Molly.
Molly.
Molly. Yeah, it's Molly Collins. Yeah, right. Yeah, this is not one of the teachers. My link for getting the Arabic teachers is not working well. So this is Molly Collins reading. She's working with me. She's been in the classrooms working with the teachers. So in the first reading, it's going kind of fast. But what you'll see is she's reading the words, but she's doing a lot of mediation. She's saying what it means to escape. She got away. She's providing added information, and the children are pretty much listening. I'm going to just jump toward the end here.
Okay, good. Some of you remember. The story is of a little
Now we're
fish
getting toward,
named-
this is like 5 minutes in here, and they're still with her.
Big bad tuna. The tuna are afraid. That's right. Do you think these fish are going to eat the big bad tuna? Or just scare them? Just scare. You think they're going to eat them? I think their mouths are too little. They probably can't bite these fish. But you think they're just going to scare them? Because they look like a big fish. I think so too. I think so too. Let me ask you something about this story at the very beginning.
Okay, she's going to go back through the story and repeat some of it. I'm going to just keep going because there's not time. So in the next read, you'll see the children are contributing more. They say some of the words, and she asks some high-level questions. They get to the end, and you think swimming's by then they understand it's a tuna, and they can use one of them uses the word tuna, and they begin to explore it more deeply. I have another video of the children in the hallway where they have a beautiful display of swimming and the fish and so forth, and the children can really talk about the story. So they're absorbing it, and to the point where they're able to reflect it back and talk to the teachers about it. So the repeated book reading was absolutely critical. It got the Arabic and the English teachers planning together, shared goals, and it was a starting point for the curriculum. And it was really a way of sharing power and responsibility. And then it has a focus. So there's English. So there's clear days when there's a focus on Arabic language instruction and English reading instruction on the other days. And of course, the repetition, as we've talked about yesterday, is really critical. Now, another routine that we have instituted that's been very popular is something that Debbie Rowe has created and used called Morning Message, which is a routine where the children write, actually the first morning routine here is one where the children share names, and they have name cards, and they have little songs. So the children are introduced to letters in a functional way. And there's this morning message where the children are able to communicate. They do a repeated writing about the same sort of topic that happens day after day. That is done in Arabic on some days and on English on other days. I think I have a picture of it here. Okay, so down here on the bottom right, this is kind of dim. But the teachers start with the morning message, and today is, and then so-and-so who the particular day of the child is, and the child's favorite something or other is. So the children take turns. They actually do some writing, or the teacher does a little bit of writing, and the children really begin to follow along, and it's a basis for instruction around print and how print works. So it's a shared writing experience. You see, I was in the classroom one day, and this little guy was spontaneously sitting here. The teacher had the morning message up here. He was looking up here and copying it on the piece of paper here. He's quite engaged. I see kids on whiteboards doing that. We have signing in, Arabic and English. The children write their names in the morning. They come in, and this is an independent routine, quite common in a lot of preschools in the United States. We're really pleased at how well that we continue to have play-based learning occurring. So there's children are playing around the classrooms in the ways that you'd like to see in a preschool. We really stress the need for the teachers to sit with the children. I know this is so dark you can't see, but she's having lunch. I really push the teachers need to be sitting and talking with the children during meal times. You see the kids playing together here. Of course, the writing, they go on field trips and they come back and they write about it. This is Arabic and English. This is writing that was done as a part of the dramatic play area, all things that you'd expect in high-quality preschools. Here you see integrated thematic units. So they had the final unit was about growing things. So you saw stuff growing around the building, and you saw children here doing science explorations. Now, we track the learning. Using the PALS, it's a preschool assessment of literacy. And you can see that we have this is the KG1 is the yellow and the KG2 the blue. So these would be like kindergarten children, and these are preschool children. This is the average score here for how many letters they know, which is increased significantly. And what is the one on the right? I just put it up here. Oh, and this is the Arabic. So we have Arabic scores. So you can see actually by the end of the year, the KG1 Arabic kids were almost where the KG2 were. We have quite a bit of rapid progress going on both schools. And there's no worksheets or anything. It's that sort of shared functional writing that's happening. This is just one I'm sort of proud of. The Arabic teachers were so excited about the data. They put together a data presentation for the parents. Increasingly, they get more and more parents in. They have fathers and mothers, and they put their own data presentation together. They had like and this is just their own data. They put it together. I don't need to show it to you, but this is what they presented to the parents. The parents were totally captivated by it. So we had like 100 parents, I don't know, maybe 8 or 10 fathers, with the staff, the Arabic staff, doing this presentation and talking through to quite a full crowd of parents. Now, where we're going next year, I'm wonderfully fortunate to have Brett Rivera, a wonderful doc student, is writing apps for iPads. She just did this a couple of days ago. The teachers all now have iPads, and she has written apps where the child assessments are on these iPads and the classroom observations. So we're going to be having the teachers collecting data in a technological way. I've talked about the continuity issues. This was, I was just there. This was the second week of school. For some of these children, it was really only the third, maybe the first full day. And things were going on. I thought this was a particular nice one. Here we have this teacher going right on ahead, and you can see this is a little girl who's not so sure about school. But she's sitting next to the teacher where she has the comfort and support. And this is just what the classrooms look like. I walked in one classroom after another, and every single classroom, this was the level of child engagement that was happening. This was the kind of teacher-child interaction that were happening. And we're 4 or 5 days into the school year. And everywhere I went, I had pictures of kids reading books, writing, everything. You would think you'd been at the school for 6 months. Okay, so in conclusion, I think that I didn't talk too much about the political context that's outside and the institutional challenges, but they're considerable. But what I've found is that if we have this alignment of systems inside the school, these routines, these expectations that are laid out very clearly, coaching supports, we're able to manage to keep going in a fairly clear way. What's very important, the principal lays out a clear, consistent vision of what effective practice looks like, developed a really good, strong spirit in the school. I think morale is absolutely important. They've had very high quality professional development. It's an unusually fortunate school with that respect. But I think that these instructional routines are critical. They have really bought into these things that I highlighted. That's part of what it means to be a teacher there. Schools come from around the country now, and then they go back and they want to try to do some of these instructional routines that we put in place. I think the monitoring of both of their own instruction and of the learning is really important. And I'm hoping that with the iPads, this gets something even more well embedded in their thinking and guiding their instruction. And finally, I think the really critical thing is we've got in place a way that we're having conceptually rich and language-rich teaching across both languages. I didn't talk much about math, but there's some really excellent math instruction that's going on, bolstered by a curriculum that was written by Herb Ginsburg in the United States, which Pearson doesn't want to sell here because it's too cheap, but it teaches kids. Okay, thank you.